we've come to the end. I'm about to do the final interview in this series. I'll be talking to Jay Sweet, who's executive producer of the Newport Folk and Jazz Festivals. And we'll get started right now.
How did I do?
Great. How are you, Jay?
I'm usually not as technically savvy, so I'm glad I actually am here talking to you.
I'm not either. Instagram Live makes it easy even for people like us.
Still complicated for someone like me.
Well, I'm glad you're here and that you took the time to do this. Why don't you start out by telling us who you are, where you are, and what you do?
My name is Jay Sweet. I'm the executive producer of the Newport Festivals Foundation, which runs the Newport Folk and Newport Jazz Festivals. I'm on the North Shore, Massachusetts right now, looking out at the ocean, wishing I was in it. But yeah.
Well, for anyone on here who may not be familiar, gasp, with the festivals, can you give us just the elevator speech of what they are?
Yeah, there are these two events that were started. The Jazz Festival started in 1954 and the Folk Festival started in 1959. The Jazz Festival was started by my boss, George Ween, who is in his 95th year. And he and a guy named Pete Seeger started the Folk Festival in 1959. I started off in 2008 working on the Newport Folk Festival, and then kind of took it over in 2009 and was running that up until about, I don't even know, 2.5 years ago, where they also entrusted me to run the Jazz Festival. And then about about 9 months ago, over a year ago, just a little over a year ago, I was asked to run the foundation as well and be the head of all three branches of the foundation.
Anyone who's on here because of me will know that I'm a huge devotee to the festival and the community that has coalesced around it. One of the things I love about it is the rolling lineup announcement, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that and how you tie that to contributions in the artist's name.
I feel we're pretty good at making lemonade out of lemons, and the rolling lineup really actually started when there were several artists. I don't even remember, maybe 2013 or maybe it was 2014, that there were a bunch of artists that, due to corporate run events that were in and around us, not allowing us to announce artists, and we had started selling out. Not immediately, but in advance. And so we just said, what's the rush? And I've never been one to like just posters with the names and small names and big names. It's just not my thing. And I just was like, what's the rush? Isn't it more important that we use our megaphone to really highlight every artist and get the fans to actually know, why I or we, the team, picked those particular artists. And then when I kind of took over the foundation and really asked the board if we could really focus on doing some music education program and actually giving back into the world, we tied it to it. What better way to find out what organizations we should be working with around the country and places like Puerto Rico than working with the very own artists who play our festival for no money whatsoever to say, what do you care about? And if they care about it, Dan in our office does an unbelievable amount of due diligence and finds out to make sure that the ones that we're supporting kind of are up to snuff. And that way we feel like we get to use our megaphone to not only highlight that artist and their accomplishments, to highlight what that artist, what he or she may care about, and make a donation to that institution, and then start to make the artist feel, and this again all happens before the artist ever steps foot on the stage. So don't get confused. I know you're not, but we are not a benefit concert. We put all our money out before the event even happens. So any of the money that we do give out after the events is to artists who were surprise guests who showed up. And then usually that carries us into our fiscal year, which is ends on September 30th, right? And so we've really, I think we've done a good job of, I mean, last year was 77 organizations. And even before the kind of pandemic hit, we were already most of the way through our donations. We only had about 15 or 20% left to give away, which was really the base budget to start the Newport Musicians Relief Fund. We saw that, not saying that the organizations that we were still giving didn't need it, but because they weren't able to have kids into their, you know, their places of where they were teaching. And there were so many artists that I know of personally that were writing to me and just saying that they were really in bad spot. And so the whole staff, we got together and I just said, listen, I think we need to kind of, this is a break glass in case of emergency situation. And I think we need to change our mission statement for the foundation, because without artists, we're not a festival. And if we really believe in the term family, which we use a lot, especially with the folk festival, that family, you got to be there in the good times and the bad times. So we just said, listen, these artists are in trouble. And we were really sad. I mean, we were excited, but to be honest, really sad when we put it up to realize we weren't really expecting, you know, to get the number of applicants. And then when we realized that demand was going to far outpace supply, some amazing people stepped up. You know, I want to give a big shout out to people like Billy Strings, unbelievable amount of money that he donated. I mean, shockingly so. Jim James took a gig from Levi's to do a stay-at-home kind of virtual thing, and then told Levi's, he just said, I want make the invoice to the Newport Festivals Foundation. Hamilton Lighthouser, you know, the list goes on and on. Lucius, you know, so many of the folk family artists, Tallest Man on Earth, all stepped up and did little mini, without, by the way, the greatest thing was never, hey, I'm going to do this. We would find out almost the same way everybody else would find out that they were doing it. Shaky Graves auctioned off some amazing things to raise money that he had kind of earned at Newport over the years. His Burgee, the Newporter guitar that he played his first time, he auctioned those things off and gave all the money to the foundation. So pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, talk about building community and about family. As somebody, you know, that has an early bird membership with the foundation, it already felt really good to know that it's supporting all these other different organizations. Mm-hmm. But when you guys launched the relief thing, you know, I tried to tell everybody I knew, you don't have to give that one time a year when you're paying for your membership. You can go in and make another contribution at any point and continue to support it at a deeper level, or make a recurring gift. I just think it's so easy to get on board with what you do.
And the interesting thing is, I mean, again, we sometimes luck into seeming smart. We honestly, you know, it was like, okay, maybe we have like, you know, I don't remember the number. Let's say we had $35,000 left in our budget to give, and it has ballooned up to $160,000 to $175,000, meaning. And then when I went to the board of the foundation, I was like, look, you know, they had kind of okayed it just for, you know, a certain brief amount of time, and then we'll just shut it down and go back to our normal programming, so to speak. And we had a conversation. We're like, why? If there are still applications of people that need relief, and again, Dan and the team going and double checking, and there's still people that are willing to put money into it. And by the way, it's 100 cents. Like, we don't take, it's a full pass through. Mostly, I think the only we're doing it is because, you know, it's an anonymous thing. You know, we know who's getting it, but it's hard to take relief. It is. I mean, it's tough to, you know, even if unemployment rates and stuff, it's tough to be bailed out, and we don't want people to feel there's a quid pro quo or that they owe the foundation something or anything. So this is a very, very small group of people have access to who is applied, and so in some respects it takes it adds a sense of coverage for people to not feel as weird about needing the money. And I think that's an important thing. It's hard to say I need help. It's hard, and I know because the foundation itself is in, it was an awkward thing. Of course, the elephant in the room. It's an awkward thing to say, why are you guys still giving out money when you've made it abundantly clear, and it's pretty clear that we are not even close to solvent for the future. We talked a lot about that internally, about asking for help, and it was amazing. It was really heartwarming when we did our own refund and ticket thing to see how much support there was. It was amazing. We still came up a little short, to be brutally honest with you. And there was thought about, well, how do we raise money? Well, the only other chance we really see between now and that September 30th to not take a brutal loss for the year is on the festivals proper, the weekends of the festivals proper. And for a long time, we thought, like, okay, we'll do this kind of passive telethon donation-y type thing. And just over the last couple of week or so, with everything that's going on in the world, we're like, you know what? Fuck that. We're just going to use our megaphone, and if we go out, we go out trying to help others, and just to use our megaphone in that weekend to draw attention to what's going on in the world, and letting what I feel we've always done. I mean, even obviously well before my time, is the festival don't. I want to make sure this is clear. The festivals, we don't want to personify the festivals. It's not a personification. The festivals, the two festivals don't, I know it's going to sound weird, just let me go through it, don't have a voice. They're not a voice, because the festivals are the way the staff feels about it, the way the fans feel about it, the way the artists feel about it. It's that triangulation. It's not one of us gets to speak on behalf of the other two, right? So I don't get to sit here and say, Newport Folk Festival thinks this way about everything that's going on in the world. I can, meaning I can as Jay Sweet, but you won't hear Newport say something like that, because I'd be speaking for you and I'd be speaking for the artist, even if I feel we all feel the same way. So really what the festivals are a megaphone for what fans, my staff, and the artists want to say. It's an amplification platform. And most importantly, it has always been made specifically for artists in a safe environment to speak their mind. That's why, Pete started it, because Pete was blacklisted. Pete Seeger was blacklisted. Couldn't go on TV, couldn't go on the radio and talk about things that the world should have been talking about. Wars, inequality, racial injustice. And, the one thing that you couldn't stop him from doing was getting up in front of people. Remember, this was the very first festival. These were it wasn't like, oh, let's just throw a festival. That didn't exist. The idea of doing a music festival didn't exist. So this whole thing that I'm now very fortunate to be one of the leaders of here it was literally expressly 4 times like we are living in right now, to amplify the message of artists who feel nervous to let the world know how they feel. And so I do feel that it's the festivals in which I will fight tooth and nail. And it is the duty of the festivals and to continually provide that megaphone. As long as it's not about hate, this thing surrounds hate and forces it to surrender. That's, we're not using a platform to megaphone a type of hate, but, if it's injustice, I just want to just kind of repurpose just take what the artists are saying and just throw it out to our audience. And obviously, if the fans feel strongly about something, give them a chance to vocalize it. And, once or twice a year, I will say how I feel about something as me. But again, the festivals, does that make sense? That the festivals don't have a voice? It isn't a brand. It's not a brand that says, hey, we at Texaco feel strongly with our brothers and sisters. No, I mean, the festivals are not that. They are a safe platform for all 3 of us, artists, fans, staff, to speak out and be amplified.
A platform and a convener. And
That's great.
Since you used the phrase "speak out," I'm gonna
Yes. That is. I've been listening to that quite a bit, actually. I'm listening to that quite a bit.
Yeah. Can you, in light of what's been going on the last few weeks, can you talk a little bit more about that legacy that George Wein and Pete Seeger established, and that now you're the torchbearer of? I mean, what role do you think art in general has to play in making sense of what's going on and in helping us to move forward through it?
Yeah, I've kind of had some breakdowns over the last couple of days, as I know a lot of other people. I've been wrestling with a lot of things and feeling kind of down and I kind of wish, to be brutally honest, I'll say it again, like, if I could have anything in this one particular year with everything that's going on, I would be so desperate to have this festival as a sense of catharsis, of being able to speak out about, the sets that we would have. If I had a song, Speak Out, Change is Going to Come, I think these were all precursors to what would have been. I think every single set, if the festival had happened, would have become just a flamethrower of justice, I think the thing that, I'm not saying any year, but of all the years in an election year and with everything that's happening, especially since it is truly in the DNA of the festivals. They were created specifically for moments like this, and for it to not happen has just been pretty much emotionally gut-wrenching. And I've been having a really, really difficult time because I think the world needs a Newport Folk and Jazz Festival now more than it perhaps ever has. And so I know I'm not really answering your question other than to say it's been really, really hard because of the history. I mean, I was talking to George the other day, and he was telling these stories of, again, someone who was married to a Black woman in the early 50s, just telling stories of how they were practicing marching at Newport after the festivals. Like the festivals, like either before the festivals in the morning or after the festivals, they were practicing marching in the town that at that point in America stood for the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. And they would have these Black leaders and, Black bluesmen marching with like Joan Baez and Pete Seeger and Theodore Bickel, and they'd be practicing marching, and then they would all get on the buses at Newport and be bussed down to like Selma and do the marches. And it was like, and to be blunt, it was taking a lot of very highly educated Northeast people and putting them on buses and say, put your kind of money where your mouth is, and say you can just speak these things or you can literally get on the bus. And so those things with Newport, we have social media, what we're using right now, and we have our own different megaphones. But there is something so different about the harmonic vibrations between people in a collected group, especially since not everyone's going to see everything the same way. But if you can bring everyone into a group and peacefully congregate, the power that emanates from that is just something I think is sorely, sorely missing. And you can see it with, not to sound too, let me just say, I think it's a little bit ironic and weird that I love the fact that there are 20,000 people being able to legally, peacefully protest, but you can't have a festival, which in some respects I'm like, well, what if, I guess there isn't a festival, what if there was a peaceful protest? Could we apply for a peaceful protest license and do a march? It was seemingly that's legal. So I want to support everyone that needs our help. I just really wish we could all be together and follow in the footsteps of the people who came before us that used the festival to help change the world.
Yeah.
It's hard sitting on the sidelines.
I want the record to show that I made it almost 10 minutes into this without crying, but here we are.
Yeah.
So,
I have my glasses on so you can't see how red my eyes are.
When the point comes when we can gather together again, I can't imagine how difficult it must have been for you guys not to make the decision because, it wasn't safe to gather. So that's an easy decision, but to have to follow through on not hosting this year. I can't imagine. Um,
Yeah. We talk
but
about muscle memory a lot, the staff. We talk about muscle memory. Um, I've spent 13 years of my life honing and learning from people like you and my staff about how to throw a festival better. The one thing I will say we pride ourselves on is we don't look at any other event as comparison except our own. We are our own benchmark. We will never, as long as I'm running it, will ever think, wow, we've sold out, we've done his best. We can't make this festival any better. And I'll be blunt. After last year, I was on a boat with very fortunate with Brandy and her wife and Jim James and my wife, and both Brandy and Jim looked at me and they started laughing. I was like, "What are you two laughing at?" And they're like, "You are so fucked. I don't know if you'll ever be able to do a festival as good as last year. You are so screwed."
I'll tell you, that's what all the fans were saying too.
By the way, and my wife
Are.
turned to him. My wife turned to him and said, "Shut up. Literally allow him like 45 minutes before he like throws himself into trying to figure out a way to even remotely capture the magic we had." And the reason I brought that up is because, in a very weird way, I got to look at it as silver lining that maybe this is the reset that was needed a little bit. And maybe it doesn't have to try to top it and have another surprise. And I feel like our staff, my staff, and we just kill ourselves so hard to try to please everybody, which you can't do. Please everybody as much as we can, provide as much support, screw scalpers, get the best music, put as much music as we possibly can into a very short amount of time, just stuff it with music, bring it down to its bare bones. Do you need 45 craft vendors? And if you could lose a couple, does that mean we could put more music in there? Like we fall on the side of music, and that was really great last year. It was really celebratory. I thought it was a very celebratory year.
Yeah.
Of that maybe the world isn't a shithole, or that may be too pointed, but that there was hope. It was a very hopeful year. And again, I got about 20 minutes of enjoyment before two artists were like, yeah,
You know what?
not going to happen.
I mean,
So maybe this reset in some respects, to me, I'm just telling you from my perspective, gives me a perspective of to be very thankful for what we have, no matter who is on the lineup. How much of that is important, meaning name-wise, like the size of a headliner name or anything, or is it just giving a space to the people who are speaking out the loudest against injustice, regardless of how popular they are? If I were to say what I would do differently, even knowing what I know now, if I could magically throw a festival in whatever 5 or 6 weeks, I would seriously not be as concerned on. I'm not saying that we're so concerned about name recognition. I think our lineup speaks for itself, but I think I would really go towards really putting together music that speaks out, is joyful, is thankful, and for the artists, quite frankly, who really want to come to Newport. That is something that I find myself falling more and more into, is the artists who realize what it means to get there. Instead of me begging and pleading for 10, 20 years, however it may be, for those names that so many people frustratingly and infuriatingly ask for me every year, as if I've never heard of Paul Simon. You should try to go for Paul Simon. Oh, really? Wow, that's a fantastic idea. Sorry, sarcasm doesn't really behoove me, but I'm just saying there are so many artists who want to be there for the right reasons, and I more and more am leaning towards, why not? We have such an amazing audience that will learn. If we put them up there, we'll learn why. We'll find out. We'll try to figure out why we put them up there. And I always say to people, like, you might not get it, but after the event, to an artist, you don't understand. The fans that you do pick up at this festival will be the most psychotically great fans you ever have. And you will be astounded at how loyal they will be to you. So it might be not quantity, but the quality of music fan that you turn on at Newport, because literally, at least, maybe that's an overstatement, worldwide, nationwide, with every agent and every manager, when I hear them talking about it, is the audience at Newport listens so intently, it's almost unnerving. Like you can't throw in a B set because people will be like, eh, even your like B plus set, that's pretty good. Like, unless you absolutely do it. And the thing is, I'll be blunt, and I'm going way off piste here, but I can't tell you how many, I won't. There have been some artists who literally have not shown up. They've been like, or I just don't want to, because they can't come with the light show, and they can't, they can't bring the auto tune, and they can't bring the 45-piece orchestra. They have to strip it down, and they're like, I don't know if I want to get up in front of that audience and do it. Anyway.
So moving forward, assuming that we can get together in 2021, which, by the way, is 410 days away because I reset my countdown time.
Don't remind me.
For the future moving forward, I don't think you need to keep topping it. I think giving the platform and the space for people to gather, especially after we didn't get to, people are going to continue to be so grateful for that. But what's your vision for moving forward, and how taking a year off will change things?
It's a good question. I'm honestly, I'm a little scared to think about it. I kind of just have again, going back to muscle memory, my muscle memory is to, once the middle of May happens, by the way, I'm usually planning, let's say this was a normal year, in May, up until like from the new year until May, I'm not really planning much anymore for 2020. I'm already planning for 2021. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's like 16 to 17 months is how long it takes to throw the festival. Mm-hmm. So half of my brain really stops in January focusing on 2020. That's when the staff really kind of does a lot of the taking over and puts the overall arching thing that we planned for, stops planning and starts doing. Mm-hmm. And I then join in on that kind of around Memorial Day. I stop planning for 2021 and I start joining the rest of the staff with focusing on enhancing the experience for the thing that's coming in 5 or 6 or 7 weeks. That muscle memory has been unbelievably difficult to unwind right now. That's a long-winded way of saying is I have been terrified. I haven't started looking at 2021 yet. Some to a question that I know someone was asking was, some of that is actually because I've invited the entire lineup for 2020 to come back. So far I've had a couple of no, and a couple of who the hell knows if I'll be able to be a musician at that point, and maybe 1 or 2 I'll have no idea if I'm going out in 2021 until there's a shot or some kind of cure or some kind of whatever. It's been, so every time I kind of focus on 2021, to be honest, I get nervous. I get really, really nervous. So, and I also don't want to take my eye off the ball from what we began this conversation, which is I got to make sure the foundation is solvent. I literally have to make sure that we can have a future. So my eye is just to get through these 2 weekends at the moment. Look, I will say I felt good, which is rare. I mean, not good, meaning like I had this big feeling of uplifting a couple of days ago when an artist who was not scheduled to play for 2020 said, look, I know if there's a slot, if someone says no, I want in. And I asked why. And this is a fairly, it's a fairly significant artist. And I said, I wasn't trying to be coy. I was like, well, great. Of course, I'd love you. But why? He's like, because, and this is where I got emotionally happy. He's like, because if I'm not there on the first note that is played on the Friday of Newport, I feel I will be missing a part of history. And that got me pretty choked up. To be like the first note at 11 a.m. on Friday, whatever it is, the cheer of that, no matter who it is, that this artist was like, I don't want to miss that, even if it wasn't that artist. They're like, I just don't want to miss that moment. I was like, fuck yeah, it's pretty cool.
And that's really what the whole thing
Yeah,
is about from my perspective.
yeah, you know, like that's nice to get those phone calls instead of, you know, yeah, instead of other phone calls such as, you know, with the not the negative, just, you know, everyone's up in the air and you know what are we going to do? And I try to stay focused on, again, keeping this year's events that we're doing on the festivals proper, instead of being a passive fundraising telethon thing, which was the plan up until about 10 days ago, and just making sure that we use this platform to carry on the messages that we're all seeing in our social feed right now, and letting the artists let their music, let their words, let their signs and statements have a bigger place to be pushed out to our community and beyond. And then the hope is that, you know, the hope is if you just do what you've been doing the whole time. You know, somebody said something, it was, I'll give credit where credit is due. Jim James said something to me about a month ago, called to check in because I was in a bad place and he wasn't in a great place, and we'd kind of been, and he said, the megalomania on you, meaning you're talking about me. And so he's like, if you think that Newport wouldn't happen, it's only not happening the way you envision it happening. He's like, if the thing goes under and your foundation goes under and you lose your job and you quit and you whine about it, he's like, 3 to 4 to 5 to 6,000 people would still probably show up if I got on my thing and I called 6 of our friends and said, we're going to Fort Adams. We're going to stand in the middle of the thing and just play acoustic guitars. That would be the new Newport Folk Festival, and it would have nothing to do with you. But you thinking that it going away on your watch is selfish. And that was a fantastic way to put it for me. To be like, I have nothing to do with this thing. I feel like I have a handle and I'm a part of it. But he said it is so much bigger than what you are. So if you and, you know, if for some odd, horrible reason you and the staff couldn't be there, the fans and the artists would take over. They would just do it without us. And it might not run as smoothly, or it would be different, but a different type of Newport folk or Newport jazz would emerge. And that was a really helpful way to say, then let's not try to raise more money from people who don't really have it, or I feel our donor base is so small, to be brutally blunt, and I don't want to ask anymore, because as we started this conversation, it sucks to ask. It sucks to ask for help, especially when your whole organization, by the way, has been completely built or repurposed to do the exact opposite, to be the people who are giving. That's the whole thing of when I came on board, is I really, you know, George gave me a long leash, thank God. And George was like, let's bring it back to the way it was, man. Let's make it so we are a instrument of good. Let's be the virtuous, positive feedback loop. So we strive. The staff and I have worked so hard over the last specifically 3 to 4 years on not just worrying about ourselves, but worrying about everybody else. Because if we worry about everybody else and we give to everybody else, if you give to everybody else, you have to feel like there's that karmic feedback loop that if you do that, people will notice, and then people will help you wherever you need it. So I don't want to stop that loop and say, well, we can't give anymore, we need help. I want to just keep giving and then kind of figure it out from there. I don't know if anything I'm making makes sense. It's been a pretty long month. It makes a lot of
sense. Have you ever read Amanda Palmer's book, The Art of Asking? She talks about the
I haven't read it, but Amanda is somebody I know pretty well, and I've a couple years back, we haven't talked in a while, but a couple years back, we had a similar conversation about this.
She talks in the book about building up community around you, and then that net helps to protect what you've built. And I think Newport is a great example of that.
Yeah, it was shown in the refund donation period per month, you know. And by the way, let me say something to that. It wasn't just the financial support. Quite frankly, for me, it was equal amounts the emotional support. I need all my money back, Jay, but I'm here if you need something in an ear. Like, or I don't have any money to give you, but here's a drawing that I did. You know, I had little kids making me drawings, you know, and I got to tell you on behalf of the staff, and I'm very honored to speak on behalf of them, is that emotional support was just as important and valuable as every dollar. Because as you said, for us to undo the work, we spent 9 months, or in some respects, for me, you know, like 12 months building up something to cancel it is, you know, somebody else said it's like, you know, every year I feel I throw a wedding with 10,000 lovers of mine. And it's the first time I've ever had to call off my wedding. And I was going to miss the 10,000 faces of people that I got to invite to my wedding. I know it's a weird metaphor, but somebody said that. I was like, that's about
No, it makes
right.
a lot of sense. It has that kind of weight, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I also feel like there's this, I don't think I need to explain it to you, but I definitely think there's a feeling that we all get over 3 days that carries me emotionally through some really tough times.
100%.
And if you've been, you know the feeling I'm talking about. If you haven't been, you should experience it once in your life, because I have been. I am the least objective person on this exact issue, but I will say I've been to pretty much every major music festival in the country and several outside of this country. And I've actively sought it out because I was hoping to learn more. And I learn from every festival I go to, of course, but I'm talking about the feeling. And it's, there, by the way, there's no other high five line that is created by the fans. Any festival I've been to, that's the last thing you feel when you walk out is a bunch of people and you're looking over your shoulder being like, who's famous behind me? Why is everyone cheering as I walk through? That doesn't happen. That I have if there is another festival, they completely borrowed it from us, and I'm all happy about it. But if you haven't experienced Newport and that feeling, and that's what I kind of already stupidly, I'm already missing it. It hasn't even, the weekend hasn't happened yet. I'm already nervous about the lack of the vibe that I get from it. You know?
Yeah. That's why I have a countdown timer on my phone. I feel like I spend the rest of my life just waiting for that weekend to come back around.
Leading up to it, I'll tell you the low point is that kind of where it's the saddle, where it's the last year's, it hasn't worn off, but the memories aren't as fresh. And the excitement that it's only a couple of months away hasn't hit in, and there's this like nadir. You know, I think, by the way, this was a byproduct of the question you asked earlier, is the rolling lineup announcement. In some respects, that's like getting your fix just a little bit at a time. It's like,
yep.
Okay, yeah, you know, I'm one more artist. Here's another artist. Here's another artist. And then you kind of see this thing grow in this slow, methodical way. I think all gets us. You know, that's why we're bringing that artist. And this artist, on Friday is going to make sense because maybe they'll sit in. And I play that game too, by the way. You're not alone out there, you Newport freaks. I play that game too.
Well, let's end on a real high note here. Have you gotten to listen to much music lately? And if so, what have you been listening to? What's getting you through this?
The new Run the Jewels is pretty good. I think it's really helped me. I think listening to Phoebe Bridgers, Phoebe has helped. I was very fortunate that Krungbin realized I was in a bad space and sent me their new album, which hasn't come out yet. And I've been blasting that new Krungbin album. But again, knowing that there's not that many people here, I will say the thing I've been doing the most is listening to the best sets of the last 60 years of the folk festival and the best sets of the last 65 years of the jazz festival. I'd say majority of which have never been heard by anybody. I've spent the last 2 months listening to sets, just our own sets. That's a hint of why I might be doing that. But I've been listening to some of the coolest shit. Some of the, yeah, I know it's kind of funny. It's like, what have you been listening to? My own music. No, I didn't play a note of it, but it feels that I can understand why some artists would be like, what are you listening to? My new shit. I haven't been listening to anybody but my own music that I'm making because it's so awesome. No, I've been listening to, of course, I listened to Jason's new album, but that was obviously incredible. But I did say I heard a Song Exploder podcast with Rateliff about his new single of his new album, which was about Richard Swift, who I sorely miss dearly. And I know we have celebrated him at the Fort, but there's a Song Exploder podcast with Rateliff about his new album. And I think I cried 4 times listening to it. I think it's really hard. I'm speaking on behalf of anything Rateliff, which is absurd, but I think it's really hard. That album is fucking amazing. And what he had planned to do with that album through this year was going to be really powerful. And I think it was going to bring him to a whole other level of, of kind of completing him as an artist. And I feel sad for so many people who had, albums coming out. Sarah Jarosz has a fantastic new album. And so many of the people that are putting their albums, I feel very proud I'm proud for them for taking it on the chin and be like, I can't go tour on it. I can't sell my merch on it. I probably won't make my money back on it, but the world needs this music. I think there's something very brave in that, in just putting it out there, even though you can't celebrate it the way somebody had planned to do. Think of how much goes into a planning of someone like the release of Nathaniel Rateliff's or Jason Isbell's new album. I mean, there's literally like a dozen people whose whole kind of thing is to figure out the best way to get that out into the world. And when that can't happen in the same plan that you planned for, but saying, fuck it, send it out anyway. That's when you ask me, what are artists doing? It's that I said this someplace else, and I don't mean to repeat myself, but one of the reasons the Relief Fund really was important to me is I listen to music when I'm happy. It enhances my mood when I'm joyful. In fact, it usually makes me happy. But I actually listen to music more when I'm not in a good space.
Me too. And
it helps me stop spinning out, because I can spin out pretty easily. And it helps me not spin out. And then I keep asking myself, well, who the fuck's doing that for the musicians? Who is supporting the musicians when they're having a bad thing? I mean, they can go listen to Leonard Cohen. They can go listen to artists of the past, whether it be Joni Mitchell or whomever it is that gives them the inspiration. But I meant the emotional support of if you're an artist and you are the conduit to the muse comes to you, you create music and it goes out to the world. When you need a musical shoulder to lean on, who is there? And then I was like, we should be. This family that we keep saying is a family. Well, when you get a phone call from an artist that says, I'm going on food stamps next week, and I got kicked out of my apartment, so I'm living in my van and I'm now on food stamps, and you realize this artist has played the festival a few times, you have to ask yourself, you give, and then you figure out, even if you don't have that to give, you give, and then you'll figure out how you're going to get it on the back end some other way. By the way, someone just asked me if I've checked on Mavis. Absolutely, weekly. She is in super quarantine, by the way.
Good.
She is in lockdown. I've seen some funny memes of it's not funny. They should, if only these people that are dressed in paramilitary gear could be just protecting Mavis's building. That I'd feel much better about in the world. Yeah, there should be a whole Clorox cellophane wrap over Mavis right now. Protect Mavis at all costs. Protect Mavis at all costs. But yeah, I need Mavis. I kept telling her I just want to hug her. I feel my life would feel much better if I could just hug Mavis. That would help. That would help a lot.
Mm. We should get bottle up Mavis hugs and just send them out to everybody.
Absolutely. And yes, I know Mavis is on the new Jules album because she told me. She was Team Mavis was very, very wanted to tell me that Run the Jewels, that she's hip with Run the Jewels now. And I was like, thanks, Mavis. Appreciate it.
Last year, I got back from Newport on like July, I don't know what day, but like within a couple days, Mavis was here in York, and I was in the front row and got to see her, and it was like the nicest way to like coast in off of the Newport wave and ease back into the rest of life.
Yeah, I can't do that. I wish I could do that. I go curl
Well,
up in a ball for a couple of weeks.
well, listen, if you need to do that, you do that. We need to
Yeah.
protect you at all costs too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I want to say thank you very much for taking time out of
course.
your day, particularly when the ocean is right there within view.
Can you see every once in a while I look out and I'm looking at it? No, I swim in it daily throughout the winter and everything, and it's somebody said it. I think I do that because it cools me down a little bit because I run a little hot. So
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I want to say thank you too. This is the final interview. It seemed like the right thing to do to wrap up with you, because so much of my sense of community in music in general is tied back to Newport. And I've talked to a lot of people that are part of the Newport family. I saw Steve Benoit was on here. Nina, of course, was on here. And I also talked to Eric Suramoto a few weeks ago. So I want to thank the 73 people, including you, who have spent some time with me on a Sunday over the last 12 weeks. Thanks to the other people who said they wanted to participate and we never got it scheduled. And thank you to the people who have listened in to hear what's going on with artists and people throughout the music community and how this is affecting all of us.
I appreciate it. It's always nice, to maybe not do drunk J Suite margarita nights every once in a while and actually just have a nice Sunday afternoon conversation. I appreciate it as well.
Well, far be it for me to get between you and margaritas.
No, I needed to. It's good that I've pumped the brakes a little bit. I did the old. I went in and I bought two bottles of tequila for my 2-week ration, and then 4 days later, when I went back in, the guy was like, "That's the quickest 2 weeks I've ever experienced in my life." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe when the guy at the liquor store is telling you to pump the brakes."
Yeah, well, between Jim James and the guy at the liquor store, it sounds like you have people looking out for you.
I do indeed. I'm very fortunate that way.
Good. Well, thanks again, Jay, and thanks to everybody else. And I'll see you, I hope, in 410 days.
Me too. Peace, everyone.
Hang in there.